Okay, so what are variables? Variables are kind of a data storage where we can store values inside so we can use it in our code. So we can use variables with the var keyword. Some words in JS or any language are reserved, which means you need to use these keywords within the rules of the language. So if I use var in a way that JS doesn't like it, it's going to break the code and you will get an error message. So we can use the import method right here. Just going to go to my first JavaScript where we have the running import. Just going to delete anything. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put var. Okay. And then just save the document and reload the page. Okay. We get an expected error. That means we are using var, but there's something missing. And JS doesn't like that. And that's why we are getting an error. Whenever we create a variable, we need to assign a name to that variable. So I'm going to put my first name. That's the name of the variable. Now, so we created the variable, we named it. Now the variables, you need to contain that data. So to put a value or data inside a variable, we need to use the equal sign and then just put the value in it. In this case, I'm going to use quotes, just single quotes, and then we end the statement with just a semicolon. If I just reload the page, now nothing happened. That's fine. We get no errors, and that's good. Okay, so let me just console log whatever we have inside. Console log, just the same we did previously, and we give console log my first name. Okay, so I'm going to reload the page, and we get run. Whenever we console log, it's grabbing what's inside this variable. In this case, we have a text. When we use the quotes, it's because we have a text inside. We can talk about text later. Whenever you have text, you're going to hear maybe strings. That's a different word. In JavaScript world, whenever we have words, we use string. So we're going to talk about strings later. So what happens when I change it? Just remove one of the quotes. I'm going to reload the page. And okay, you get run is not defined. So what's happening here? This is because whenever we're calling my first name, we are telling JavaScript to output whatever is inside my first name. And we have run without quotes. And this means that it is trying to find or trying to reach a variable. Whenever we don't put we never use the quotes, it means it's trying to find a variable. And since ron doesn't exist, nothing's going to exist. And it's going to give us an error message. Now if I do var ron, just like that, and put it equal, and I say ron, it's going to find, because it's defined. So let me reload the page. Okay, we get ron. So that's good. We can use variables in that way. Okay, so now there's some things that we cannot do whenever we create a variable. Let me just delete this and just delete this as well. Okay, so what you can do whenever you create a variable, which you cannot do, is to use spaces. For instance, my first space name, and then just assign a variable or a number. Okay, so we cannot do that, or else this page is going to give us an error message. Another thing we cannot do is just, maybe we are using it correctly, and I say, okay, I have several, my first name variables. This is my number 1, my first name. If I reload the page, of course we get an error. We cannot use numbers at the beginning. So what we can do is we use a number, maybe at the end, or maybe in the middle of the variable. So we can do that. So don't worry, we're gonna talk about a lot of variables. We're gonna use variables a lot, and for now we just have fine. You just need to know that you have to use a name and assign a value. If you never assign a value, for example, Just gonna let you know right now that if I do console log and just console log my first name, even though the variable is not defined, it has no value, no name, no number, and reload the page, it's just gonna give us undefined. No, that's fine. It's not an error message. It's saying that the variable exists but has no name. That's good. It's not an error message. We're going to talk about this later. Okay, let's go to the next lecture. It's going to be variable types.